Healthcare is too expensive. Employers are offsetting costs onto their employees. Who will make health benefits affordable for hardworking Americans and their families? You will. This is the Empowering Plans Podcast, a show dedicated to helping you once again emphasize the benefit in benefit plan. Now prepare to learn, plan, save, and protect with the FIA Group.
Hey everybody, it's me, Ron Peck, Executive Vice President and General Counsel at the FIA Group. And with me, to my right, is the one, the only, thank goodness, Brady Bizzarro. What's up, Brady?
How's it going, Ron?
Doing okay. And to my left, hold on, let me just check. I pledge allegiance. That's right, that's my left. Pat the Man Santos. How you doing, Pat?
So far, so good, Ron.
All right, we'll see if we could change that. So today we are doing a one-of-a-kind, at least for now, but something that we hope to do in the future, assuming that we have some more of these, Wicked Awesome Win Podcast. It's wicked awesome.
Wicked.
You know what's funny? I came up with that name, Brady, and I'm not even from New England, but I read a few books and I figured it out. So what are wicked awesome wins? Well, I'll tell you. When team members have done something, accomplished something that goes above and beyond even the expectations of the FIA Group. And I want to make something absolutely clear to the audience, Brady. What they would consider to be a wicked awesome win, we consider to be a semi-wicked, normal day, par for the course.
Of course.
Semi-win at the FIA Group. To be a wicked awesome win at the FIA Group, you need to do something incredible, something remarkable. And today, we are sitting with someone who did exactly that. Now, do you like Rob or Robert,
I like to go by Rob.
See, I was going to call you Robert. Being an attorney, I assumed, you wanted to do something more formal. It's like when you email other attorneys, you say, Mr. Attorney Martinez the first, Esquire, and you list a JD and all the other, qualifications. At least that's what I do. But you're going with Rob. That's really familiar, That's nice.
It's familiar and it's comfortable, but when I'm reaching out, I go by Robert. I keep the formalities there.
All right. Well, you're reaching out to billions and billions of listeners. I mean, literally
Billions.
Everybody on the face of the earth and maybe other planets as well are listening to this podcast. Not right now because it's being recorded, but at some point in the future. So maybe you want to go with Robert just because you don't know the Martians quite well yet?
You know what? I'll stick with Robert.
All right, Robert Martinez. You are an attorney with the FIA Group, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you spend a lot of time fighting with providers of healthcare, yeah?
That's all I do.
That's all you do. You literally wake up in the morning, that's what you do. You have breakfast, that's what you do. You come to work, that's what you do. That's what you do all day.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it? You hear it? There's a haunted sound in his voice. I can see it in your eyes. They can't because they can't see you, but I can also hear it in your voice. You are definitely, if I were in your shoes, I'd have, some post-traumatic syndrome here. I mean, I am amazed that you're smiling, you're so happy, because this is stressful work, yeah?
It can be, but the FIA Group is a fun place to be.
So basically, when we're talking about dealing with providers, generally speaking, there are conflicts or situations that occur before payment, and there are conflicts and issues that occur after payment. And when it's before payment, or even better, before treatment, right, before they even treat the patient, but let's say, before treatment, before payment, it's a little bit easier to deal with the conflict because, you're holding the purse strings, right? You've got all the power. But after payment, right, they've got some of the money, they want some more money. Or, after payment, you realize you paid too much and you want some back. That's when it's really tough. That's when the rubber hits the road, is dealing with these situations after payment. And that's your sweet spot. That's what a lot of the work you're doing sort of orbits around or hinges on, is either dealing with how much is payable, right, despite the fact that they've already taken some of our money, right, getting them to stop seeking more from the patient or whomever, or two, realizing that we've paid too much and trying to get some of that money back.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to pull a bear out of a bear trap?
I haven't had that luxury yet.
I disagree. I think you do it every day. And, so, and yeah, with that as the backdrop, just the incredible difficulty of the work we have you doing. He's going to use this as a basis for asking for a raise when we're done, Pat. I got a feeling. But with that as the backdrop, I think it's important to talk a little bit about your wicked, awesome win. And guys, if this goes well, and assuming we can find one more person at the company who's ever done anything remarkable, we'll do another one of these. But for episode 1, Rob, let's talk about your wicked, awesome win. Brady, do you want to let the audience know a little bit about some of the background of what happened here?
Yeah, so as part of Rob's job, as we just talked about, his job is to fight with providers. In this case here, the provider had a very, very large bill here. The bill charges were $1.5 million and change. That's a very large bill.
Just another day in Adam Russo's life, but for the
sure.
rest of us.
The rest of us, I mean, we can only aspire to see bills like that all the time, like Adam does. But so the group in this case came to us with this problematic bill through their TPA, one of our clients, and asked Rob here to perform a miracle and basically deal with a $1.2 million balance bill. So in this case, and Rob, if I'm wrong, correct me, but the plan paid 150% of Medicare, which was in the plan language, and that's all the plan paid. And the rest of the bill became the balance bill, and the patient was on the hook for this $1.2 million. Isn't that right?
That is correct. The plan only paid 150% of Medicare here for this treatment.
As an aside, guys, I do want to point something out. We're talking about, what, $300,000 paid?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's more than I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, like that'll pay off a bunch of people's student loans. It's so funny when we talk about 300, like, wow, what savings. I can't believe they got away with only paying that up front.
Right.
I mean, shoot, if I had that money, forget about it. I'll just, self-treat and go buy a Bentley. But anyway, moving on.
So, Rob, we have this $1.2 million balance bill, and the plan's given you some authority to, say, negotiate with this provider. And as we know, the provider is seeking this balance bill from a patient who probably doesn't have the means to pay $1.2 million, if I'm correct. Isn't that correct?
They probably don't.
They probably don't.
So you're saying it wasn't Adam Russo?
Wasn't Adam Russo in this
I'm
case.
keep beating
So-
that dead horse.
I mean, what did you manage here? Did you get a couple $1,000s off the bill? I'm imagining that's sort of the best you could do, right?
No, I got the whole $1.2 million written off here.
The whole thing. So you
The
got
whole
the entire
thing.
thing.
Insert sound of screeching tires coming to a halt.
Right. Or if you could see Ron's face like now, like I could, it's total shock and amazement.
It's because I didn't read the notes before we started.
You
the
did
podcast,
not.
but-
That's correct.
Oh my!
So that's obviously a very impressive feat to accomplish, and definitely not typical in our industry to see that size of a bill written off. So what do you think? What was the magic potion? And don't reveal the secret sauce, of course, on this podcast to everyone, but talk as much as you can about what sort of went on when you were talking with this provider about, getting them off this ledge of $1.2 million.
The first thing we do with any balance bill is we enforce the plan documents. The plan document was set and final that it's only going to pay 150% of Medicare. Sorry, provider, you're not going to get the rest from us. Try to move on. And at that time, there was a little bit of hesitant questioning from the provider, but they reviewed the plan documents.
Right, and real quick, Rob, so providers know that this is their best bet, right, to go after the entity here with the deep pockets. So they're going to do all they can to see if the plan is going to pay more. They're going to review that plan language over and over and over again, look for, cracks or holes or different interpretations they can perhaps use. They're probably going to turn up the heat on the patient and let the plan know that they're doing that and try and pressure the plan into paying some more so they can, deal with their angry employee. And you're saying in these cases, none of those tactics worked.
None of these tactics worked from the provider. I was just very focused on the plan document, and they went through 3 different reviews of the plan document prior to making that decision that they're not going to get that balance and they need to write it off.
So presumably, after they do a review of the plan document, they're probably hoping that they're going to find traditional, usual, customary language talking about average charges in the area, and then they can say, your payment methodology in this case does not match the plan document. We wrote what the plan, promises us. Get out of town, and you lose. In this case, the plan language actually matched the methodology. Do you have any idea who maybe contributed towards writing that plan document, by the way?
Well, that was the FIA group.
Oh, okay, thanks. So
The
there
FIA
you go.
group reviewed all those documents, the insurance card as well as the plan document. The provider wanted to go with the usual and customary rate. But when they reviewed the plan document and we focused hyper on what the plan document allowed, it was maximum allowable charge. And that was defined clearly in all the documents that they were presented as 150% of Medicare.
So, in situations like this, after they've reviewed the plan and they've come at us pretty hard and we really enforce the plan language that fortunately in this case we actually wrote, and we finally get it through their head that they're not going to be able to access additional funds directly from the plan, that's usually when they lean a lot more heavily on the patient because the feeling is, all right, plan, you're not required to pay anything additional, but you're going to voluntarily pay something additional because I'm going to make life for your employee a living hell. And that's the strategy that they'll usually apply when the plan itself is not an easy target. And ordinarily, that's sort of when the dance begins, and it's kind of approaching the plan administrator, the plan sponsor, letting them know these are your rights, but you may want to sort of come off those rights and give me a little wiggle room to make life a little bit easier for the patient. And what I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, in a situation where like the balance bill, I don't know, is $20,000 or $10,000 or $5,000, I feel like those are cases where there's actually more back and forth and more negotiation, because I think the provider realizes, one, if push comes to shove, they will be able to get something close to that from the patient, even if it's over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or B, it's a realistic number that the employer, even though they're not required to pay more, can at least digest and say, you know what, I could throw another couple $1,000s at this to make it go away. I think in some ways, even though we're flabbergasted by how much got written off here and what an incredible job you did, in some ways, I think the size of this bill almost helped our case, because it's this, you're going after this person for $1.2 million. It doesn't matter what payment plan they get on. You're never going to get anywhere close to that from this guy. And even the plan, who would usually be willing to negotiate, let's say hypothetically, we're willing to double what we paid you. We paid you $300,000. We'll pay you $600,000. It's still not even half of the balance, let alone the actual original billed amount. So it's kind of like this. The number is so big and so astronomical, there's really no point to even engage in negotiations. And I wonder, and you were the one on the phone with these people, do you have a feeling just talking to them that they realized just how ridiculous this is? I mean, it gets to a point, don't you think?
Yeah, and there was a lot of shock from the representative that I was talking to from the provider's office of when they finally came to the conclusion that they couldn't recover any more from the deep pockets unless the deep pockets was willing to throw in a little bit more. There was a shock that they were upset by this bill and upset that Joe Schmo is not going to get to pay this even if they tried to get it. They were a little bit questioning their own job and what they were doing at that time.
Wow. So, it's funny because, well, I use the word funny, but it's anything but, because, but by the grace, right, it could be any one of us. I understand there's a lot of dispute and fighting over what's fair, what are fair prices for healthcare. I know we talk about in our other podcast drug prices and what the manufacturers charge for that. Those are front and center. But these types of prices, they're kind of camouflaged by insurance. And politicians really only talk about the cost of insurance, not the actual cost of healthcare. And when we're fighting over, well, I think you should take $10,000. Well, we think we should get $50,000. $40,000 to any of us is a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things, it's not newsworthy. But when you start to see numbers like this, I think it definitely puts the crosshairs where I think the hospitals don't really want it to be, which is on them. Because it comes to a point where at some point you have to say, look, I don't think this entire cost of healthcare issue is being driven by insurance and by the health plans. Some of it falls on the provider. And when you see a bill like that, it's really hard to justify objectively how you come to a number like that. A lot of, they talk about, $1 million babies and premature births. And I remember a number of years ago, AOL, America Online, right? This was back when they were still doing something, right? I remember the president, the CEO, he did some staff meeting that was publicized, right? They were really grilling him on the rising cost of their health plan. And he got crushed because he blamed it on the fact that they had 2 premature births in the same year, and their plan had to pay $1 million each. And at the time, they said, how could you blame the poor babies, right? Don't blame the babies for our failures. But nobody really stepped back to say, why does it cost $1 million to deliver a baby? And when I look at something like this, I start to wonder, is it going to become almost white noise, where this type of bill is commonplace? And I think we need to make as much noise as possible while this still shocks us before it gets to the point where it no longer shocks us. Because if there comes a point where a $1.2, $1.3 million bill, $1.5 million bill doesn't shock and appall us and doesn't shock the provider, like you said, then I think we've failed as an industry. So Brady, what do you
Great
think,
point.
buddy?
No, I think those are great points, and I want to channel Adam here because he often tells a story on the road of a relative of his who got a bill in the mail, an outstanding medical bill that was a small amount, and that bill concerns them more than $1 million bill would, because in their mind they could pay that bill, right? So they're much more distressed about getting a $5,000 bill, an $800 bill even from a provider that's outstanding. So I think it reinforces your point, Ron. And also, I just want to comment on the fact that this case really shows the importance of having good language, because if the plan in this case didn't have good language, the plan might have found itself having to pay a lot more or all of this bill. And we've had many cases on the consulting side where plans have to pay a lot more of bills that are about this size, and there's some kind of quirky fact pattern involved where maybe stop loss isn't available, and this causes plans to go belly up and employers to go belly up. So it just really highlights the importance of having strong language, especially with a definition as important as maximum allowable. And I think that's equally, and as much as Rob did, miracle worker over here, the language itself, I think, is equally important in the fight against these extremely high bills.
So, in closing, I mean, Rob, you deal with a lot of cases. Again, some of them are awesome wins, but not necessarily wicked awesome wins. But when you look at those awesome wins, I mean, again, you're getting these cases after payments already been made, treatment's already been provided, and now there's a dispute over a balance or over an overpayment. Is there any, if you could give just sort of a quick piece of advice to our clients and our listeners, things that they should be doing pre-treatment and pre-payment that would ultimately make your life a little bit easier?
I would like to see them have good plan documented language. That is the thing that has made my job the easiest, as well as education of the employees of potential involvement for treatments. If they've got something coming on, reaching out to HR, just keeping your employer involved so they're aware of these upcoming bills that could be coming their way. And there's ways that they can prevent them from becoming these big bills by maybe pre-negotiating or using another service that FIA Group does have to get a better solution or better cost.
That last point is a good one, and I want to make sure we give it a couple minutes, because when you talk about educating employers and educating employees, my concern, and I think it's your concern as well, is that a lot of these self-funded plan administrators and plan sponsors and the employees, the plan members, they think that they're just on a traditional PPO, right? They think I'm going to go to the doctor, give them my card, it's going to get paid, and I never hear anything about it. Maybe I get an EOB and right across the top it says this is not a bill, so I can ignore the rest of it, right? And the provider, maybe not in a case like this, $1.3 million, right? Nobody actually expects anyone to do anything with that. It's crazy. But, to Brady's point, I send you a balance bill for $8,000, $5,000, $1,000. I'm banking on the fact that you, as a patient, as an employee, are going to be so shocked and scared that I'm going to use that fear and use that shock to turn you against your employer, to turn you against the plan sponsor, against the plan, and use you as a weapon to get more that maybe I'm not legally entitled to receive from the plan, but I'm using you as a means to get it. And to your point, if those employees and employers are educated ahead of time of how the plan works and what could potentially happen and what the repercussions are and what the process is, I think you take that weapon away from the provider. And my concern is a lot of these plans, maybe they enter into sort of a payment methodology, reference-based, Medicare-based, whatever it is, where they're paying the provider a little bit less. And as a result, the provider's balance billing. And they don't want their employees to know because they don't want them to be upset, right? And so it's a short-term PR, HR play, but then it causes these long-term damages. So in your opinion, working on these cases, you work with plans that probably don't do a great job of explaining it to their employees ahead of time, and then you work with plans that do a great job of explaining it to the employees. Do you notice a definite difference when it comes to the bounce bills?
There is a huge difference when we have clients telling us that they're going through employee education and their employees are educated about everything and know that as soon as they get a balance bill, they go to HR or they go to whoever the plan administrator, and it's dealt with in a prompt manner. It's amazing how much better those get resolved because they're resolved early and on time.
There you go, folks. So basically, Robbie said, strong plan language, strong supporting materials, and education. And it just so happens the FIA Group could help with all those things. Imagine that, he's a plant, folks. So I think that's all the time we have today for this wicked awesome win. Great stuff, really. I think that we could all learn from this as we continue forward in an area that I think is going to continue to grow. On behalf of myself, everyone at the FIA Group, Rob, Brady, Pat, the man Santos, keeping it real over there in his producer's desk booth area all by himself. We'll get you some lunch. I want to thank you all for listening to the Empowering Plans podcast and this first inaugural episode of Wicked Awesome Wins. Keep it real.